Most of what I learned about modern society and what was hip and happening with the day's youth was learned through my 1.5 year older sister. Growing up, though, my sister always felt much older than me than 1.5 years. My sister managed to become cool among her peers, a skill I wouldn't minorly obtain until many years later. Many of my social skills, fun outings, and pop culture knowledge was due to my sister. Most importantly, without her, I would have been in a terrible state of loneliness in my childhood. I was my sister's shadow. Where she went, I went. What she wanted to do, I would participate. And unlike some younger siblings who resent living in their older sibling's shadow, I relished in it. "Are you her sister?" people would ask, and I would proudly confirm I was. Even in 4th grade, when we had to choose a famous dead person for our history project, and I, an overthinker even at 9 years old, couldn't decide out of the thousands to choose from, so I decided to do my report on the same person my sister did. Not to copy her report, but it was second nature to copy her decisions. My teacher turned down this idea, though, thinking I would cheat, so reluctantly I chose someone else. Even when I was deciding on my future after high school, I heavily played with the idea of studying biology, just as my sister at college did, even though I thoroughly sucked at science class and frankly disliked it. And while I thought my sister was cooler and smarter, I never pitted myself against her. In fact, I liked that she was cooler and smarter. My first taste of modern teen fashion came to me through magazines and hand-me-downs. My sister ordered teen magazines, something I never would have done on my own. I enjoyed magazines, but more so ones that appealed to little kids, that had coloring contests and talked about how to stand up to bullies. And without my sister's hand-me-downs, I might have worn the same white sneakers all throughout my school career, just replacing them for the same white sneakers in a bigger size as my feet grew. Although I did start having another fashion inspiration, which were Disney Channel characters. I thought layering my clothes was a super cute look. Except I only became inspired by this because I saw an ad for Shake It Up in one of my sister's magazines. My sister and I took many a trip to the mall. The actual clothing part of the mall was new to me. Before we embarked on our teenage shopping adventures, the mall to me was for Build-A-Bear and Painted Penguin before getting ice cream with my mom. There was still a younger part of me that couldn't be extinguished by trying to copy my sister. After shopping at all the hip stores, I'd beg to stop at Claire's just for 5 minutes. Although Hollister made me feel part of the popular crowd for the 15 minutes I spent waiting for the dressing room, Claire's was much more fun. I'd later become an employee at Claire's in my 20s before I couldn't handle piercing one more infant. Claire's had brighter colors and really creative products like lip gloss cell phones. These were always too expensive for me, though. One time, while I was at Claire's and my sister was at another store, I bought a bracelet that I would wear daily. It was a stretchy bracelet that had different colored blocks. Each one had a symbol like a bird or a smiley face. The bracelet was mostly blue and pink, but had all different colors, really. After wearing the bracelet for weeks, I stopped abruptly when my sister pointed out that it looked like something a preschooler would wear. I was a sophomore in high school at that time, so thus my closet was almost entirely filled with hand-me-downs or otherwise clothes I had purchased alongside my sister or with inspiration from my sister. My closet, though, could never be as cool as my sister's. It didn't matter if my closet became uniquely my style. It wasn't my sister's, and it didn't matter that my sister's closet wasn't exactly my style. It was hers. A few times when my sister would be out of the house, I'd sneak into her room to look through her closet. It felt like being at the mall, looking at all the cool clothes you imagine were your own. And then there'd come the day when my sister would get bored with them and they would finally become my clothes. The legendary hand-me-down day, when my sister would come into my room and announce she was going through her stuff and dumped a bunch of clothes on my bed. I claimed everything unless they were horribly stained or ripped. Besides clothing, these were all the pop culture introduced by my sister. 1. Titanic. My sister made me sit through the 4-hour thing. She thought it was terribly romantic, and I thought it was terrible. Period. 2. Any and all pop music, because I really don't think putting my ear up to my Nintendo DS at 13 years old to hear the Nintendo soundtrack should be considered musically rounded. Only exception to this is Kelly Clarkson, the only music artist I'd listen to until I heard other ones from my sister, because one day on vacation when I was 9, my parents put on some music award shows at the hotel, and I fell in love with Since You've Been Gone. Other music I listened to previously was Disney soundtracks, especially the Aristocats, and nursery rhymes. 3. Horses. Okay, this was back in the mid-2000s when horses were all the rage for tween girls. Horses were very cool. I definitely wouldn't have gotten on the horse boat without my sister's obsession. I was obsessed with cats. I'd go with her to the horse farm every week, although I'd spend most of my time petting the barn cats. But I did ride occasionally and attend riding summer camp. 4. Twilight. And by Twilight, I mean the vampire, not the unicorn. 5. Rom-com movies with leading ladies like Rachel McAdams and Zooey Deschanel. 6. Shows that were not on PBS Kids or Disney Channel, such as The Office or Modern Family and What Would You Do and The Tyra Show. 7. How to text. Seriously, I used to respond to everything on text with either "that's cool" or "that stinks," until my sister told me I needed more variety to my responses. 8. Band class. Why did I join band? Because my sister did. Duh. 9. Theater. Ditto with band. As I was not naturally cool to other people, my sister was the only one to teach me. The only people I'd become friends with were kids who moved from another country, who also didn't know all the norms and sometimes didn't even fully speak English, but usually ended up moving again. And homeschooled kids. My best friend was a sheltered Christian homeschool girl, and it didn't matter if I didn't know all the pop artists because her mom didn't let her listen to pop music anyway. I had one constant friend at school who made it to graduation and didn't move away, and she had ADHD, so she was picked on by other kids, but unfortunately she picked on me. Most of my social outings were with my sister and her friends. Something quite disappointing. Just because I knew all the cool stuff, it did not make me cool. I remember in middle school, I read The Click after my sister read it, and a girl came up to me since she saw me carrying one of the books from the series. The girl was popular and pretty. I was not used to being talked to by popular kids at school, or frankly, anyone other than my one friend who picked on me. Kids that moved here for a couple months, then moved away, and teachers. I still remember the girl approaching me as the class was lining up to leave for the day. She almost looked at me with a smile. "Are you reading The Click?" she asked excitedly. I was reading The Click, and the book was pretty good too. I responded, yes. Aren't the books funny? She asked, in a totally acceptable way to continue the conversation and try to connect. But instead of indulging her about what I thought of the books, I flatly said, not really. I watched her face fall. Then she walked away. In all honesty, I thought the books were clever, but they never made me laugh. And if something is funny, you should laugh, or at least sharply nose exhale. But years later, when I looked back, she probably just meant clever. Darn. I didn't know how to connect with my peers. I went to a school where there were only 32 kids per grade from preschool through 8th grade. This meant that, except for new kids here and there, I was stuck with the same kids for 10 years of my childhood. What was there even to talk about? I watched from a distance as kids chatted at lunch tables. I imagined their conversations. Hey, how's geography with Mr. Stevens? It was good. And how was science with Mr. Peters? Not bad. We talked about cells. Oh, learn anything interesting? Yeah, plant cells are different than animal cells. Oh, word? How's the corn dog? Pretty yummy. My favorite at the caf is the breadsticks. What about you? I like the pizza. Very cool. Do you want to bounce on the trampoline with me this weekend? Yes, I do. See you then. I'm gonna read now. All right, I'm gonna enjoy my corn dog. It took me a while to learn that a lot of neurotypical kids connect through gossiping, which was probably why my ADHD friend was always not invited to the other kids' lunch table so they could gossip about her. For me, I was not gossiped about or made fun of. For the most part, I was treated as if I didn't even exist. No one was mean to me, but no one was nice either. No one wanted anything to do with me most of the time. I was picked absolutely last each time for dodgeball, even after I annihilated the other team. And if I said anything, I was frankly just ignored. A horrible, lonely existence. The truth was that nobody tried to connect with me because I was very hard to connect with. The fact that I had nothing to say had everything to do with me, because even after 9 years of going to the same school with the same kids, my other peers had stuff to tell each other every day. Also, copying my sister didn't completely hide who I was deep inside. When I was in 6th grade, every day when I got home from school, I'd watch Barney on PBS Kids. First, because I always watched PBS Kids, and PBS Kids changed their program schedule, so Barney happened to be on when I got home. Frankly, I would have opted for Arthur, which was on the previous schedule, or Fetch with Ruff Ruffman. But then I decided that I enjoyed Barney, so I began attentively watching it out of choice rather than convenience. My sister, of course, thought that my Barney watching was utterly uncool, as she should, as anyone my age should, because, sorry, how were my peers supposed to connect with me when they were watching Modern Family, a show my sister later introduced me to, and I was watching Barney? Sure, it would have been nice if they were more friendly with me, but I've tried to heal my horrible middle school experience over the years by trying not to blame the 11-year-olds from the past for not befriending me. It was very hard to keep up with my peers' interests. My peers started dating, even getting their first kisses. What the hell? I was still playing Polly Pockets in my bed fort. Slow down a little, will ya? I remember one time as I cleaned my room, I blasted "Since You've Been Gone" by Kelly Clarkson and imagined what the girls at school would think of me if they saw me in my element, listening to pop music. I was quiet at school, but I thought surely if they saw me in that moment, singing and dancing to one of their beloved pop songs, they'd think, no way, she's actually kind of cool? And they'd invite me to hang out with them. I always thought there was some way to get in with the crowd. For instance, I thought no one liked me because I was insanely ugly. Looking back at pictures, I wasn't ugly. However, my autistic brain needed some concrete explanation as to why I was such an outcast, and I didn't have autism as an explanation then. Because I didn't have anything to talk about, sometimes I hoped something crazy would happen that would connect us all. One time for a field trip, I got stuck sitting next to a boy on the bus ride there. Everyone else on the bus talked. We didn't talk. Not one word. I wanted to talk, to make a friend, to say something funny, something clever, but I had no material. He sat uncomfortably in his seat, and instead of talking to him, I stared out the window and imagined that a pterodactyl swooped down towards the bus and tried to attack the bus. I imagined us bonding over this insane event that would be even more crazy if we didn't talk during it. Surely if a pterodactyl swooped down, then there would be things to say. Instead, there was no pterodactyl, and we departed the bus in silence. It has taken me many, many years to realize that I don't always have to be the first person to say something, that anyone else could be the first to say hi. For so long, I've taken it upon myself to feel responsible for silence and awkwardness and lack of conversation, and only myself. For a long time as an adult, I became the carrier of conversations. When I'd see someone, I'd make sure to smile and say, "Hi, blank, I read that people like you more when you use their name frequently." Then I'd ask them questions about themselves, only to not receive questions back. Nonetheless, I persisted, offering follow-up questions, asking, "How did your dog like the dog park?" and offering words of enthusiasm and encouragement. And for them, not to want to be my friend anyway. One time in 8th grade, we went on another field trip. Our last field trip, in fact, in middle school. A trip to Springfield, Illinois. The kids were so excited, even though we were only going to be looking at wax figurines in a museum. I think they were mostly excited to stay at a hotel overnight. When we were there, they decided to give my friend a makeover. However, they did not give me a makeover. I divulged that I must have been too ugly to give a makeover to, that they knew nothing they could do would fix me. But in all honesty, I think they liked my friend more than me, even though they bullied her. They saw potential in her. They saw, if you look like us and learn a couple tricks of the trade, then maybe you could be us. But I think in my case, they felt hopeless. Like I said before, there was nothing awful about how I looked, even though I thought that was the reason for my unpopularity. But even if I got my makeup done, I didn't wear makeup then, and put on their clothes, what made me unpopular wasn't external choices I made. Who I listened to, what I wore, what I looked like, how many facts about the Jonas Brothers I might know, how to text, how to cook a pizza, how to kiss a boy. I was unpopular because I was maybe the only autistic kid in a class of 32. Except maybe this one boy who was obsessed with bugs and had emotional outbursts and moved away after 6th grade. He was sadly bullied quite harshly by the boys in our grade as they created a website dedicated to bullying him. All I faced was shunning. My only constant frenemy, was maybe the only girl in our class of 16 girls with ADHD. Except for me, who has ADHD and autism. I know how this outcast thing worked. In fact, I befriended a girl in the grade below me who was unfortunately bullied. She had ADHD too. I used to think it was just the girls at my school that were hard to get along with. That if I moved to another school, surely those would be girls I'd click with. One time, my friend invited me to a 24-hour lock-in at a mega church. I decided I was going to be popular that night. So I copied the behavior of some girls and I was in. They wanted me to hang out with them all night. It was exhausting, but it was fun. It was like I was an undercover spy that had to fit in with a new town as quick as possible. Or an actress in a play. Engage. Eye contact. Smile. I directed myself in my head. Unfortunately, the megachurch started doing a laser show and something in my demeanor changed because a boy I had been hanging out with asked quite concerned, "Are you okay?" I slapped on a smile and said, "I'm good." And he smiled again too. I wished I could transfer to their school. Then I could have a really solid group of friends. I was oblivious that the kind of questions like, "Are you okay?" would have only increased with time. For a short time, until they quickly shunned me as well. Just like I experienced at school, just like I've experienced at work, that my moment of stardom was only a ticking bomb. And even though no one knew I was autistic, let's be honest, how many people, let alone kids, know what female autism would look like back in 2008? At that time, I might have been considered to have Asperger's, although not the stereotypical Asperger's. They sure did think I was weird, shy, different, and abnormal. I mean, there was definitely a reason that I had to see a school psychologist from preschool until I graduated to try to fix my shyness. But that never worked because I wasn't shy. It was autism, obviously, now. So you can imagine how much of a relief it was to see my sister in the hallways. Someone who always said hi to me and invited me to do something with her and her friends after school. And the best part of having an older sister wasn't adapting her fashion style, music tastes, and movie preferences. It was that she was there for me.